28F, stood at the altar, my hands trembling just a little inside Liam's. The light from the stained glass windows painted the white roses around us in soft colors. Everything was perfect. It was more than perfect. It was the moment I had been dreaming of since I was a little girl playing dress-up in my mother's old clothes. The scent of lilies and old wood filled the church, a smell I knew I would associate with happiness for the rest of my life. Liam squeezed my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles in that gentle way he had. I looked at him, and his smile was everything. It was the smile that had won me over on our first date, the one that promised safety and adventure all at once. His eyes, the color of warm honey, were fixed on me, and in them I saw our future. I saw a little house with a crooked fence. I saw 2 kids laughing in a backyard, and I saw us, old and gray, still holding hands. The officiant, a kind man with a soft voice, was speaking, but his words were a distant hum. My entire world had narrowed to the man standing in front of me. This was it. This was the start of forever. I had waited for this, worked for this, and believed in this with every fiber of my being. Our love story was the kind people wrote about. We were the couple that all our friends looked up to. We finished each other's sentences, we knew each other's deepest fears, and we supported each other's wildest dreams. There was no doubt in my mind, not a single shred of it, that this was right. This was my destiny. To my left, my maid of honor, Sarah, shifted her weight. I glanced at her for a fraction of a second. She was my rock. My other half since we were 5 years old. We'd shared everything from scraped knees to broken hearts. Having her stand beside me today was as essential as having Liam opposite me. She gave me a small, tight smile. She looked a little pale, but I figured it was just the heat in the church or the nerves of the day. She had been complaining about feeling unwell for a few weeks, but had brushed it off as stress. I made a mental note to force her to go on a spa day with me after the honeymoon. Liam began his vows. His voice was steady and clear, filling the silent church. He spoke of the day we met, of how he had known instantly that I was someone special. He promised to be my partner, my confidant, and my greatest champion. He promised to love me in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow. Each word was a beautiful, perfect brick, building the foundation of our life together. My eyes filled with tears, happy tears that I blinked back carefully, not wanting to ruin my makeup. My heart felt so full it might just burst. I looked from his earnest face to our joined hands, and I felt a profound sense of peace. Then it was my turn. I took a deep breath, clutching the small card on which I had written my promises. But when I looked at his face, the words on the card vanished from my mind. I didn't need them. The words I wanted to say were etched onto my heart. Liam, I began, my voice a little shaky with emotion. From the moment I met you, my world changed. You brought a light into my life that I didn't even know was missing. I saw Sarah sway in my peripheral vision. It was a slight movement, almost unnoticeable. I paused for a second. A flicker of concern passing through me. She blinked slowly as if trying to focus. I continued, my attention returning to Liam. You have shown me what it means to be truly loved and to love without reservation. Another movement. This one was more pronounced. I heard a soft gasp from one of the pews. I turned my head fully toward Sarah. Her face was ashen. Her eyes were wide and unfocused. She was looking at Liam, but it seemed like she was looking right through him. Her bouquet of white peonies trembled in her hands. Sarah? I whispered. She didn't respond. Her knees buckled. It happened in slow motion, the way things do in moments of crisis. The beautiful bouquet tumbled from her grasp, scattering petals on the floor. Her eyes rolled back in her head. And then she fell. She collapsed onto the floor with a soft thud that seemed to echo through the cavernous church. Panic erupted. A collective gasp rippled through our guests. My mother cried out my name. Liam let go of my hands and rushed to Sarah's side, kneeling beside her. One of the groomsmen, a doctor, quickly followed. The magic of the moment was shattered, replaced by a cold, sharp fear. My perfect day, my perfect moment was broken. The world tilted on its axis, the beautiful stained glass colors suddenly looking jarring and wrong. My feet felt like lead, but I forced myself to move. I knelt on the other side of Sarah, my big white dress pooling around me. Is she okay? What's wrong? I asked, my voice high with panic. Liam looked up at me, his face a mask of concern. I don't know, Chloe. She just collapsed. The groomsman, Mark, was checking her pulse. She's breathing. Her pulse is a little weak, but it's there. We need to get her somewhere cool and elevate her feet. My father and Liam's father came forward, and together they carefully lifted Sarah. Her body was limp, her head lolling to one side. They carried her out of the main sanctuary and into the small, quiet room where the bridal party had gotten ready just an hour before. It felt like a lifetime ago. I followed them, my wedding dress catching on the doorframe. The guests were murmuring, their faces a blur of confusion and worry. The officiant stood at the altar, looking helpless. They laid Sarah down on a plush velvet sofa. My mother was there with a cold, damp cloth, which she placed on Sarah's forehead. I just stood there, wringing my hands, feeling useless. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not to Sarah. Was it the stress? Had I put too much pressure on her? A wave of guilt washed over me. After a minute that felt like an eternity, Sarah's eyelids fluttered. She groaned softly. A wave of relief washed over me so powerful it almost made my own knees weak. Sarah, can you hear me? I said, moving closer and taking her hand. Her skin was cool and clammy. Her eyes slowly opened. They were cloudy, unfocused. She blinked a few times, looking around the room in confusion. She looked at my mother, at my father, at Liam's parents standing in the doorway. Then her eyes settled on me, still in my wedding dress. A flicker of something, maybe recognition, crossed her face. Chloe, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I'm here, I said, squeezing her hand. You fainted, sweetie. You're okay. Her gaze drifted past me, to Liam, who was standing right behind my shoulder, his hand on my back. Her expression changed. The confusion cleared, replaced by something I couldn't read. It was a look of raw, unfiltered emotion. Pain, fear, and something else. She tried to sit up, wincing. She started, her voice trembling. Don't try to talk, Liam said quickly, his voice tight. Just rest. You hit your head. But Sarah ignored him. Her eyes were locked on his. She pulled her hand from mine and pointed a shaky finger at him. The room was silent. Everyone was waiting, holding their breath. I thought she was going to thank him for helping, or maybe ask what happened. Instead, she took a ragged breath. Her voice was just above a whisper, but in the dead silence of the room, it was as loud as a scream. She looked from Liam's pale face to my confused one. And then she said the words that would burn my entire world to the ground. He's my baby daddy. The air in the room seemed to crystallize. The words hung there, sharp and impossible. For a moment, my brain simply refused to process them. It was like hearing a foreign language. Baby daddy? What did that even mean? It sounded like something from a television show, not something that belonged in my life, in this room, on my wedding day. I let out a small, confused laugh. Sarah, what are you talking about? You must have hit your head really hard. I looked at Liam, expecting him to be laughing too, to be shaking his head at the absurdity of it all. But he wasn't laughing. He was frozen. The color had drained from his face, leaving him a ghastly shade of white. His eyes were wide with a terror I had never seen before. He looked at Sarah, then at me, then back at Sarah, his mouth opening and closing silently like a fish out of water. That was the moment the first crack appeared in my perfect world. His reaction. It wasn't the reaction of an innocent man confused by a friend's delirious rambling. It was the reaction of a guilty man who had just been exposed. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Liam's father took a step forward, his brow furrowed. What did she say? Sarah started to cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but quiet, hiccuping tears of someone who is utterly broken. I'm so sorry, Chloe. She wept, covering her face with her hands. I'm so sorry. Liam finally found his voice. He forced a laugh, but it was a brittle, ugly sound. She's delirious, he said, waving a dismissive hand. She fainted. She hit her head. She doesn't know what she's saying. Chloe, honey, don't listen to her. He reached for me, but I instinctively took a step back, out of his reach. My heart was starting to pound in my chest, a frantic, heavy drumbeat of dread. Don't touch me, I said, my voice barely a whisper. His face fell. Chloe, come on, this is ridiculous. Look at her, she's clearly not well. He was trying to manage the situation, to smooth it over, but his panic was leaking out from the edges. I looked at Sarah, who was still crying into her hands. I looked at Liam, with his false, strained smile. And I looked at the faces of our parents, a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning horror. My dream was turning into a nightmare. The beautiful white dress suddenly felt like a costume, heavy and suffocating. The joy and love I had felt just minutes ago were curdling into a sick, cold knot in my stomach. Something was terribly wrong, and I had a sinking feeling that my life, the one I had so carefully and lovingly built, was already over. It had ended with 6 impossible words. Liam moved toward me again, his voice dropping to a low, soothing tone he always used when he wanted to calm me down. Sweetheart, let's not do this here. Let's get you out of this dress and go home. We can talk about this later. Sarah needs a doctor, not an audience. He was trying to regain control, to isolate me, but the sight of his face, the desperation in his eyes, only made the knot in my stomach tighten. I looked past him, at Sarah. She had lowered her hands from her face and was watching us, her expression pleading. Pleading for what? Forgiveness? For me to believe her? Is it true? I asked, my voice flat. I directed the question to both of them, my gaze shifting from Liam's terrified face to Sarah's tear-streaked one. Sarah just sobbed harder, a fresh wave of tears streaming down her cheeks. She wouldn't look at me. Liam scoffed, trying to sound offended. Chloe, I can't believe you're even asking me that. Of course it's not true. This is Sarah, your best friend. And this is me. I would never do that to you. He said the words, but they were hollow. They didn't carry the weight of truth. They were just a script, lines he was reciting from a play about a faithful fiancé. My mind started racing, frantically trying to find purchase on solid ground, but everything was shifting beneath my feet. Sarah and Liam. It was unthinkable. They were the 2 most important people in my life. My partner and my sister in all but blood. My father stepped forward, his expression grim. I think the wedding is off for today, he announced to the room in a tone that left no room for argument. We need to get our guests home. Liam's mother nodded, her face pale. Yes, of course. We'll handle it. We'll just say there was a medical emergency and we've had to postpone. They were all trying to manage the fallout, to contain the explosion. But the bomb had already gone off. I was standing at ground zero, covered in the ash of what used to be my life. I couldn't feel anything except a strange, buzzing numbness. I was vaguely aware of my mother putting an arm around my shoulders and guiding me out of the room, away from the scene. As we walked out, I glanced back one last time. Liam was standing over Sarah, hissing something at her, his face contorted in a mask of fury I had never seen before. She was cowering on the couch. And in that moment, I knew. I didn't know how, or when, or why, but I knew it was true. My whole world, the one that had been so bright and perfect just 10 minutes ago, was a lie. A complete and utter lie. The person I was supposed to trust with my life, and the person I already did trust with my life, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. The numbness began to recede, and in its place, a cold, sharp agony started to bloom in my chest. The rest of the day was a blur of hushed conversations and averted eyes. My parents drove me home, my beautiful wedding dress still on, a cruel reminder of the joy that had been stolen from me. We didn't talk in the car. There were no words. What could they possibly say? I stared out the window at the passing scenery, but I didn't see any of it. All I could see was Liam's panicked face and Sarah's tears. When we got back to the house I shared with Liam, the house that was supposed to be our marital home, it felt alien. The celebratory champagne was still chilling in the fridge. Our suitcases for the honeymoon in Bali were packed and waiting by the door. A banner that my friends had hung over the doorway read, "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson." I tore it down with a single, violent rip as I walked in. My mother tried to help me out of my dress, her fingers fumbling with the tiny buttons on the back. "Let me help you, honey," she said softly. "I can do it," I said, my voice sounding harsh and unfamiliar even to my own ears. I went into our bedroom and shut the door. I struggled with the buttons, my fingers clumsy and shaking. Finally, I managed to undo them, and the heavy dress slid off my body and pooled at my feet, a cloud of white silk and broken dreams. I kicked it aside and pulled on an old t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants. I looked at myself in the mirror. My wedding makeup was smeared. My elaborate hairstyle was coming undone. I looked like a stranger, a ghost haunting someone else's life. Liam arrived an hour later. I heard his key in the lock. I heard him talking to my parents in low, urgent tones in the living room. Then there was a soft knock on the bedroom door. "Chloe, can I come in?" he asked. I didn't answer. The door opened anyway. He stood there looking exhausted and frayed. He had taken off his tuxedo jacket and loosened his tie. He looked at the wedding dress crumpled on the floor and winced. "I am so sorry about today," he said, taking a tentative step into the room. "I can't imagine how you must be feeling." I turned to face him, my arms crossed over my chest. The cold agony had now solidified into a block of ice in my stomach. "Can't you?" I asked. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, we need to talk about what Sarah said. She called me. She's mortified. She said she had a crazy dream while she was passed out, and it just came out. She feels terrible." The story was neat. Plausible, even. If I wanted to believe it, I could. I could choose to accept this explanation, to sweep this horrible, messy incident under the rug and go back to my perfect life. A week from now, we could reschedule the wedding. A year from now. This would just be a crazy story we told at dinner parties. But I couldn't ignore the look on his face at the church, the raw terror. That was the truth. This story was the lie. "A dream," I repeated, my voice devoid of emotion. "That's the story you two came up with?" His eyes flashed with irritation. "It's not a story, Chloe. It's what happened. Why is that so hard for you to believe? Do you really have so little faith in me? In us?" He was turning it back on me, gaslighting me, making me the bad guy for not trusting him. It was a tactic he'd used before, in small, insignificant arguments. I had never seen it for what it was until now. It was a tool of manipulation, and seeing it so clearly, so nakedly, was like a switch flipping in my brain. The hurt was still there, a deep, gaping wound. But now, something else was growing alongside it. Anger. A cold, clear, calculating anger. "I want you to leave," I said. He looked stunned. "What? No, I'm not leaving. This is my house too. We're going to talk this through." "There is nothing to talk through," I said, my voice gaining strength. I heard what she said. "I saw your face. Now I want you to get out of this house, pack a bag, and go." "You're being hysterical," he snapped, his voice rising. "You're letting a sick, confused woman ruin our wedding day, ruin our lives." "Get out, Liam," I said again, pointing toward the door. My hand was perfectly steady. Get out before I call my father and have him make you leave." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw tight. He saw something new in my eyes, something that wasn't there before. The soft, forgiving woman he was used to was gone. In her place was someone he didn't recognize, someone cold and hard as stone. He must have realized he wasn't going to win this fight. Not tonight. He let out a frustrated sigh, grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, and began throwing clothes into it haphazardly. He didn't speak again until he was at the door, bag in hand. "You're making a huge mistake, Chloe," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You're throwing away everything we have because of a lie." "The only mistake I made," I said, looking him straight in the eye, "was ever believing you." He slammed the door on his way out. The sound echoed through the silent house. I stood there, alone in the middle of our bedroom, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. The block of ice in my stomach didn't thaw. I didn't cry. The time for tears was over. Now it was time for answers. And I was going to get them no matter what I had to do. The war had just begun. That night, sleep was an impossibility. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it all again. Sarah falling, Liam's panicked face, the looks of pity from our guests. The words, "He's my baby daddy," played on a loop in my head, a demonic soundtrack to my personal horror movie. I lay in our bed, the bed we had picked out together, and the empty space beside me felt like a chasm. The scent of his cologne lingered on the pillows, a scent I used to find comforting, but which now made me feel nauseous. Around 3 a.m, fueled by a toxic mix of grief, rage, and insomnia, I got up. I couldn't just lie there and let my thoughts consume me. I needed to do something. I needed proof. My gut was screaming at me that this was real, but the logical part of my brain, the part that still couldn't fathom such a profound betrayal, needed something concrete to hold on to. Liam was clever, but he could also be careless. I started in his office. I went through his desk drawers, his file cabinets. Nothing. Just work papers and old receipts. I checked the pockets of the jackets hanging in his closet. Nothing but lint and a few stray coins. I felt a flicker of doubt. Was he right? Was I being hysterical? Was I destroying my life over a hallucination Sarah had? No. I remembered his face. The guilt was written all over it. I was not crazy. I sat down at the desk, staring at our shared computer. Then an idea struck me. The phone bill. We had a family plan, both our lines on the same account. It was all online. I logged into the provider's website, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed in the password. The main page loaded, showing our data usage and monthly cost. I clicked on the link for detailed billing. I opened the most recent statement, a PDF file that was dozens of pages long. I started with my number, scrolling through the calls and texts. It was all familiar. My mom, my dad, my bridesmaids, the wedding vendors. Then I scrolled down to Liam's section. It was a long list of numbers. Most I recognized as his colleagues, his family, our mutual friends. But one number stood out. It appeared again and again, dozens of times, mostly late at night. There were long calls, some lasting over an hour, and hundreds of text messages. The number was completely unfamiliar to me. I scrolled back through the previous month's bills. It was the same story. This secret communication had been going on for at least 6 months. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was something. This was not nothing. I thought about calling the number right then and there, but I stopped myself. What would I say? And what if Liam answered? No, I had to be smarter than that. I remembered a website Maya had told me about once, a reverse phone number lookup service. I quickly typed the number into the search bar. My hands were sweating. I clicked search and waited, my breath held tight in my chest. The little wheel spun for what felt like an eternity. Then the results loaded. No registered owner found for this number. The screen read, "This number is likely a prepaid burner phone." My heart sank. A dead end. Of course, they would be smart enough to use a burner phone. I was about to close the laptop in frustration when I saw a small section at the bottom of the page. Social media accounts linked to this number. There was one result. It was a link to an obscure photo sharing app, one I had never even heard of. The username was just a string of random letters and numbers, but next to it was a tiny circular profile picture. It was blurry, but I leaned in closer to the screen, squinting. It was a picture of a cat, a fluffy orange cat with a distinctive white patch over one eye. My blood ran cold. I knew that cat. That was Miso, Sarah's cat. She had adopted him a year ago and flooded her social media with pictures of him. It was unmistakably him. I felt a dizzying wave of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped out from under me. It was her. The secret number belonged to Sarah. They had a secret phone to communicate with each other. For 6 months, maybe longer. I printed the phone bills. Page after page spewed out of the printer, a black and white testament to their lies. I stared at the stacks of paper on the desk. This was it. This was the proof. The first piece of hard, undeniable evidence that I wasn't crazy. My fiancé and my best friend had been having a secret affair behind my back. The grief I felt was immense, a physical weight pressing down on me. But beneath it, the anger was sharpening into a fine, sharp point. They had not only betrayed me, they had insulted my intelligence. They thought I was a fool. They thought I would just believe their flimsy stories and go on playing the part of the happy, oblivious fiancé. They were wrong. I stayed up the rest of the night, not sleeping, just thinking. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a chilling clarity. I had a choice. I could confront them with what I had found, have a screaming match, and end things in a messy, emotional explosion. Or I could be quiet. I could pretend to believe their lie. I could play the part of the forgiving, slightly wounded partner, and I could wait. I could gather more evidence. I could uncover the entire truth, every last sordid detail. And then, I could choose the time and place for my own detonation. The sun started to rise, casting a pale gray light into the room. I looked at the printed phone bills, my declaration of war. A small, cold smile touched my lips for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. I chose the second option. I would play their game. But I would play it better. They had started this, but I was going to be the one to finish it. And when I was done, they would regret the day they ever thought they could destroy me. The next morning, I initiated my plan. I showered, put on makeup, and chose an outfit that was casual but put together. I had to look like someone who was hurting but resilient, not someone who had been up all night uncovering a devastating betrayal. The first step was to call Liam. I let the phone ring 4 times before I answered, just to make it seem like I was hesitant. "Hello?" I said, my voice intentionally soft and fragile. "Chloe? Oh, thank God you answered. I've been so worried. I was about to drive over." His voice was filled with a practiced, convincing concern. He was a very good actor. I had to give him that. "I needed some time to think," I said, letting a little wobble enter my voice. "Of course you did. I completely understand. What are you thinking? Please just talk to me." I took a deep breath. This was my first performance. I think you might be right," I said slowly, as if the words were difficult to say. "Sarah was not herself, and you've never given me any reason to doubt you before. It was just such a shock." I could almost hear the relief flooding through the phone line. "Oh, Chloe, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I was so scared I was going to lose you. I love you so much, you know that. We can get through this. We're stronger than this." "I love you too," I said. The words felt like ash in my mouth. I think I need a little space today to process everything. Maybe you could stay at your brother's place for another night or two?" "Of course, sweetheart. Anything you need. Take all the time you want. Just know that I'm here for you, and we are going to be okay." We hung up and I sank onto the couch, my body trembling with the effort of the deception. It was disgusting how easily the lies came to him, and it was terrifying how easily I had almost believed them just yesterday. But now I had the phone bills, locked safely in my car's glove compartment. They were my anchor to the truth. My next call was to Maya, one of my other bridesmaids and a true friend. I trusted her implicitly. I asked her to come over, telling her I needed to talk. She was there in 20 minutes, a box of my favorite pastries in her hand and a look of deep concern on her face. "Oh my God, Chloe. How are you? I've been texting you all morning. I am so sorry about yesterday. It was a nightmare," she said, wrapping me in a hug. I led her to the kitchen and made coffee. For a few minutes, we just sat in silence. Then I told her everything. I told her what Sarah had said after she woke up. I told her about Liam's frantic denials and the flimsy, "it was a dream" story. And then I told her about the phone bills and the burner phone linked to Sarah's cat. Maya listened patiently, her expression shifting from shock to disbelief to pure, unadulterated rage on my behalf. When I was finished, she slammed her hand down on the kitchen table. "That absolute snake. Both of them. I knew there was something off about Sarah lately." "You did?" I asked, my head snapping up. "Yes. She's been so distant and flaky for months. Canceling plans at the last minute, always saying she was sick. And she was always so weirdly competitive about Liam. Like, she'd make these little comments, trying to one-up you about how well she knew him. I thought it was just her being insecure, but this is a whole other level of evil." Hearing her say that was validating. It meant I wasn't just imagining things or reinterpreting the past through the lens of my current pain. The signs had been there. I had just been too in love and too trusting to see them. "I need your help," I said, my voice low. "I'm not confronting them yet. I need more proof. I need to know everything before I blow it all up." "Anything, Chloe. You name it, I'll do it. We're in this together," she said, her eyes fierce with loyalty. "Sarah has me on a restricted list on her social media," I said. "She did it a few months ago. Said she was trying to have a more private online presence. I didn't think anything of it. Can you check her pages? See if there's anything I can't see?" Maya pulled out her phone immediately. "On it." She scrolled through Sarah's profiles for several minutes. "Okay, this is interesting," she said, turning the phone toward me. "She has a photo album from her birthday back in April. It's called Birthday Fun. You're not tagged in any of the pictures." I couldn't go, I remembered. I had that terrible flu. She was so disappointed. "Well, it looks like she got over her disappointment," Maya said dryly. She zoomed in on a group photo. Sarah was in the middle, grinning, holding a glass of champagne. Standing behind her, with his hand resting just a little too low on her back, was Liam. "He told me he was staying home to take care of me that night," I whispered, the blood draining from my face. I remembered that night clearly. I had been miserable, feverish, and he had been the perfect doting fiancé, bringing me soup and medicine. He had tucked me into bed and told me he was just going to watch a movie in the living room. He must have snuck out after I fell asleep. "There's more," Maya said, her voice grim. She swiped to another photo. This one was a selfie Sarah had taken in what looked like a bar. In the background, on the table behind her, was a man's watch. A very distinctive watch, with a silver band and a dark blue face. "That's Liam's watch," I said, my voice flat. "I bought it for him for our anniversary last year." Maya kept scrolling. There were other things, small but damning. A picture of 2 cocktails on a beach, captioned, "A perfect getaway," posted on a weekend Liam was supposedly on a solo fishing trip. A photo of her wearing a sweatshirt that was clearly a man's, and I recognized it as one of Liam's old university hoodies that he kept in the back of his closet. Each photo was another knife twisting in my gut. They weren't even being that careful. They were just counting on me being too stupid or too trusting to ever notice. They were flaunting their affair right under my nose. "What about money?" Maya asked, putting her phone down. Affairs are expensive, hotels, dinners, gifts. Have you checked your bank accounts? It was the next logical step. That afternoon, after Maya left, I dove into our financial records. We had a joint checking account for household expenses and a joint savings account for the wedding and a down payment on a future house. I spent hours poring over months of statements, my eyes burning from staring at the tiny print. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Mortgage payments, groceries, utility bills. Then I started noticing things. A series of cash withdrawals from an ATM near Sarah's apartment. I never went to that part of town. There were charges at restaurants I had never been to. Fancy, expensive places. And then I found it. A charge for a 2-night stay at a boutique hotel in a charming little town about 2 hours away. The charge was from a weekend in May when Liam had told me he was going on a business conference. He had even shown me the itinerary for it. It had all been a lie. I cross-referenced the date with Sarah's social media. Sure enough, that weekend she had posted a picture of a beautiful sunrise with the caption, "Sometimes you just need to escape." No location tag, no pictures of herself. She was clever, but not clever enough. The final piece I found was a recurring monthly payment to a pharmacy. It wasn't our usual CVS. This one was a small independent pharmacy, also located just a few blocks from Sarah's place. What could he possibly be buying there every single month? The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture that was uglier and more painful than I could have ever imagined. I printed everything. The bank statements, the hotel receipt, the screenshots from Sarah's social media. My pile of evidence was growing. It was a monument to their deceit. I felt a strange, cold satisfaction looking at it. This was my ammunition. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a detective, an archivist of my own heartbreak. And soon I would be the judge and the jury. They thought this was a game, but they had no idea how it was going to end. I was going to make sure they lost everything. The next few days were a masterclass in self-control. I spoke to Liam on the phone every day. I played the part of the wounded but willing to forgive fiancé. I told him I missed him. I told him I believed we could work through this. Each lie I told him felt like swallowing poison, but it was necessary. I needed him to believe he was safe. I needed him and Sarah to get comfortable again, to let their guard down. "I think I'm ready for you to come home," I told him on a Wednesday evening, 3 days after the disastrous wedding attempt. "Really?" he asked, a hopeful note in his voice. "Oh, Chloe, that's the best news I've heard all week. I'll be there tonight. But we need to set some ground rules," I added quickly. "I don't want to talk about what happened on the wedding day. Not yet. I just want to try and get back to normal. Can we do that?" "Absolutely," he said, agreeing far too quickly. "We can pretend it never happened." Oh, we wouldn't be pretending it never happened, I thought to myself. But we would be pretending for a little while longer. When he came home, he brought me flowers. Red roses, my favorite. He wrapped me in a hug and told me how much he had missed me. It was a chillingly perfect performance. I let him hug me, my body stiff and unresponsive in his arms. He pulled back, a flicker of concern on his face. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Just tired," I lied. "It's been a stressful few days." He accepted it without question. That night, he tried to be intimate. I feigned a headache, a classic and pathetic excuse, but one he didn't challenge. He just rolled over and went to sleep, probably relieved he didn't have to put in any more effort. I lay awake for hours, listening to the sound of his breathing, the breathing of the man who had systematically dismantled my life while sleeping next to me every night. The hatred I felt was a living thing, a coiled snake in my belly. The biggest unanswered question was the baby. "He's my baby daddy." The phrase that had started it all. If Sarah was pregnant, it would explain so much. Her supposed illness, the fainting. She had been wearing looser clothes for the last couple of months, flowing tops and empire waist dresses. At the time, I had complimented her on her new bohemian style. Now, I saw it for what it likely was, a strategic wardrobe choice to hide a growing secret. But how could I confirm it? I couldn't just ask her. I needed proof, indisputable proof. An idea began to form in my mind, an idea that felt both brilliant and deeply unsettling. I had to get into her apartment. I called her the next day. It was the first time we had spoken since the wedding. She answered on the first ring, her voice small and shaky. "Chloe?" "Hi, Sarah," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "I wanted to see how you were feeling." "Oh, Chloe, I am so sorry," she gushed, the words tumbling out of her. "I don't know what happened." The doctor said fainting can cause temporary confusion and even hallucinations. "I feel absolutely terrible for what I said and for ruining your day." She was sticking to the script. "Good." "It's okay," I lied, the words tasting like acid. "I was worried about you. I believe you." Liam explained it all. "I'd like to see you. Can I come over? Maybe bring you some soup?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. She was probably surprised by my offer, maybe even suspicious. I held my breath. I I'd like that," she finally said. "But my apartment is a complete mess." "I don't care about that," I said, forcing a light, friendly laugh. "I just want to see my best friend. I'll be there in an hour." I hung up before she could change her mind. I went to the store and bought a container of her favorite chicken noodle soup. It was all part of the performance. The concerned, forgiving friend. When I arrived at her apartment, she opened the door cautiously. She looked awful. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and she was wearing baggy gray sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. She looked guilty. She looked like a woman with a secret. "Come in," she said, avoiding my eyes. The apartment was neat, not messy at all. Another lie. I handed her the soup. "I just wanted to make sure you were eating properly," I said, my voice dripping with false sincerity. We made small talk for a few minutes. It was excruciating. I asked about her health. She mumbled something about low blood pressure. I told her Liam was back home and we were working through it. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes then. Was it relief or disappointment? I needed a distraction. "I'm dying for a glass of water. Can I trouble you?" I asked. "Oh, of course," she said, getting up and going to her small kitchen. This was my chance. It had to be fast. Her purse was on the floor by the couch. I knew I wouldn't have time to go through it. I glanced around the living room. My eyes landed on the small wicker trash can next to her desk. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot I had. As soon as she had her back to me, filling a glass at the sink, I moved. I walked over to the desk, pretending to look at a photo of us from college that sat on the corner. With one swift, silent movement, I reached into the trash can. My fingers brushed against tissues, a candy wrapper, and then a small plastic bottle. I pulled it out just enough to see it. My heart stopped. It was a prescription bottle. I didn't have time to read the whole thing. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely operate it. I snapped a quick, blurry picture of the label. I dropped the bottle back into the trash and was back on the other side of the room by the time she turned around, water glass in hand. The entire operation had taken less than 5 seconds. "Here you go," she said, handing me the glass. "Thank you," I said, my voice miraculously steady. I stayed for another 10 minutes, forcing myself to endure the agonizing small talk. Then I made my excuses and left. As soon as I was in the safety of my car, I pulled out my phone and looked at the picture. I zoomed in, my heart pounding. The photo was blurry, but the words were just clear enough to read. The label was from the pharmacy near her apartment, the one I had seen on the bank statements. The prescription was for prenatal vitamins. The patient's name was Sarah Jenkins, and the prescribing doctor's name was clearly visible. Dr. Evelyn Reed, OB-GYN. I leaned my head back against the headrest and closed my eyes. A single hot tear escaped and traced a path down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of grim, terrible victory. It was all true. She was pregnant. And Liam was the father. My best friend and my fiancé were having a baby together. They had been lying to me for months, planning a future behind my back, a future built on the ashes of my own. The scope of their betrayal was staggering. It wasn't just a fling. It was a new life, a new family. A family they intended to fund with my money. The cold anger that had been simmering inside me for days now erupted into a full-blown inferno. They hadn't just broken my heart. They had tried to destroy my life, to use me as a stepping stone for their own happiness. I drove home in a daze. The image of the prescription label burned into my mind. When I walked into the house, Liam was in the kitchen, humming to himself as he made dinner. He smiled at me when I walked in. "Hey, honey, how was your visit with Sarah?" he asked, his voice casual. I looked at him, at his handsome, smiling, treacherous face, and I felt nothing. No love, no pain, just a vast, empty coldness. The man I was supposed to marry was a stranger to me, a monster wearing a familiar mask. "It was fine," I said, my voice as empty as my heart. "She seems to be feeling much better." He nodded, satisfied, and turned back to the stove. He had no idea that I knew. He had no idea that I was standing 10 feet away from him, holding the key that would unlock his ruin. He thought he was in control. He thought he had won. He was about to find out how wrong he was. The game had changed, and I was making new rules. With the confirmation of the pregnancy, the final pieces of their deception started to fall into place. But I still didn't understand the endgame. Why go through with the wedding? Why put everyone, especially me, through that public charade if they were already building a life together? It seemed unnecessarily cruel. There had to be a reason. A powerful, motivating reason. And I had a sick feeling it had to do with money. My grandparents had passed away a few years ago, leaving me a substantial inheritance. However, their will had a peculiar clause, a relic of an older generation's mindset. I wouldn't receive the bulk of the trust fund until I was either 30 years old or married, whichever came first. I was 28. Getting married was the fast track. Liam knew this. We had talked about it openly. We had planned to use the money as a down payment on our dream house. Or so I thought. Now I saw the clause in a new, sinister light. Was my inheritance the real prize? Was I not the bride, but the key to the bank vault? The thought was so vile, so mercenary that it made me feel ill. To think that the entire relationship, the love I believed was so real, could have been a long and elaborate financial scheme was a level of betrayal I could barely comprehend. But it was the only thing that made sense. It explained the wedding. He needed to marry me to get the money. But I needed more than a theory. I needed proof. Hard proof. And for that, I had to do something I never thought I'd be capable of. I had to invade his privacy in the most profound way. I waited until Liam was in the shower. I went to his office and turned on our shared desktop computer. My hands were shaking as I typed keylogger software into the search engine. I found a reputable, discreet program, paid for it with a prepaid credit card I bought for cash, and installed it. The process took less than 10 minutes. The software was completely invisible. It would run silently in the background, recording every single keystroke typed on the computer. It felt like a tremendous violation. It felt dirty. But what they had done to me was far dirtier. My moral compass was shattered anyway. What was one more transgression in the name of self-preservation? Then I waited. It was the hardest part. I had to live with him, to eat with him, to sleep next to him, all while knowing he was my enemy. I had to smile and pretend that everything was getting back to normal. We talked about rescheduling the wedding. I suggested a small, intimate ceremony in the fall. He readily agreed, eager to get the plan back on track. "That sounds perfect, Chloe," he said, stroking my hair as we sat on the couch one evening, watching a movie I couldn't focus on. Just us, our families, simple and beautiful, just like you. The compliment, which once would have made me blush, now made my skin crawl. I just nodded and leaned my head on his shoulder, playing the part of the adoring fiancé while the keylogger on his computer was silently recording his secrets. After 3 days, I couldn't wait any longer. I waited until he went out for a run. I rushed to the computer, my heart pounding. I accessed the keylogger's hidden dashboard. It had captured everything: his work emails, his web searches, his instant messages. I started scrolling through the logs, my eyes scanning for Sarah's name. And then I found them. Emails. Not from his regular account, but from a new secret Gmail address he had created. He was emailing Sarah's secret email account. The subject lines were innocuous: checking in, thinking of you. But the content was the final, brutal confirmation of everything I had suspected and so much more. I read the first email, dated the day after the failed wedding. Liam wrote, "We need to be careful. She's suspicious, but I think I've calmed her down. Stick to the dream story. Do not deviate. I told her you were mortified and confused. She seems to be buying it for now. We can't let her find out the truth. Not until after the wedding is done and the money is in my account." My breath hitched in my throat. The money. There it was in black and white. Sarah's reply came an hour later. "I'm trying, Liam, but I'm falling apart. I can't believe I said that out loud. It just slipped out. I was so disoriented. What if she doesn't buy it? What if she starts digging?" Liam's response was cold and commanding. "She won't. She loves me. She trusts me. She's naive, Sarah. We've always known that. That's why this was going to work. Just hold it together for a few more months. Once I have access to the trust, we can put our real plan into motion. I'll file for divorce. We'll say we made a mistake, and then we can finally be together. You, me, and the baby. We'll be set for life. Just don't lose your nerve now." Naive. The word burned itself into my brain. He saw me as naive, not as his partner, not as the woman he loved, but as a simple-minded tool to be used and then discarded. A walking, talking bank account. I kept reading, scrolling through a chain of messages that laid out their entire disgusting plan. They had been having an affair for over a year. The pregnancy was an accident, something that happened a few months ago, but they had decided to see it as a happy surprise. Their plan had always been for Liam to marry me, secure my inheritance, and then leave me. He would give me some sob story about not being ready for marriage, play the tragic hero, and then, after a respectable amount of time had passed, he and Sarah would get together publicly. The emails were filled with their contempt for me. They mocked things I had said, conversations we had. They laughed about how clueless I was. Reading their words felt like being flayed alive. The two people I had loved and trusted most in the world had been laughing at me behind my back for months, plotting my ruin. The final email was the most chilling. It was from Liam to Sarah, sent just last night, after he thought I was asleep. "She's completely back on board," he wrote. "She even suggested rescheduling the wedding for the fall. She's making it easy for us. I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. Just hang in there, my love. Our perfect life is just around the corner. I'll see you tomorrow at the usual spot." I leaned back in the chair, feeling hollowed out, scoured clean by the sheer toxicity of their betrayal. There was no more pain. There was no more grief. It had all been burned away, leaving behind only a cold, hard resolve. I knew everything now. I had the motive, the plan, the timeline, and the proof. I had the phone records, the bank statements, the photos, the prescription, and now their own words, their own vile confession, captured in a digital prison of my making. They thought I was naive. They thought I was a fool. They thought they were just a few months away from their perfect life. They had no idea they were walking into a trap that I was now meticulously and patiently setting. They wanted a performance? I would give them one. I would give them the performance of a lifetime. And the final act would be their complete and utter destruction. I printed every single email, the paper warm from the printer, feeling like pages of a victory speech I had yet to give. The war wasn't just beginning anymore. I was already winning. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I lived in a state of hypervigilance, a spy in my own home. I played the role of the loving fiancé with an almost terrifying perfection. I cooked Liam's favorite meals. I asked about his day at work. I let him hold my hand as we watched television. Every touch felt like a spider crawling on my skin, but I never flinched. I was an actress, and this was the role of a lifetime. My audience was an audience of one, and he had to believe me completely. He did. He relaxed. He became the charming, attentive man I had first fallen in love with, no doubt believing his performance was what was winning me back over. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. He and Sarah got careless. I would hear him on the phone in the other room, his voice low and intimate, and I knew he was talking to her. He started working late again, coming home with flimsy excuses on his lips. I would just smile, tell him not to work so hard, and die a little more inside. But it was all fuel for the fire that was now constantly burning in my chest. During this time, I made a crucial ally. Liam's older brother, Ethan. Ethan was quieter than Liam, more observant. He had always been kind to me, but there was a certain reserve to him, as if he was always watching, always thinking. I had a feeling he saw more of Liam's true character than he let on. I invited him for coffee, telling him I wanted to talk about the wedding plans. We met at a small cafe downtown. After a few minutes of small talk, I took a breath and decided to take a risk. "Ethan," I said, my voice low, "has Liam seemed off to you lately? Ever since the wedding incident?" Ethan stirred his coffee, not meeting my eyes. "Liam's always been Liam," he said evasively. "He knows how to put on a show." "A show?" I pressed gently. "What do you mean by that?" He sighed, finally looking at me. There was a weariness in his eyes. "Look, Chloe, he's my brother. I love him. But he's not perfect. He's always been able to talk his way out of anything. He's a charmer. And sometimes that charm is used to cover things up." This was my opening. "I'm worried about him," I said, weaving a story that was half truth, half lie. "He's been so secretive, staying out late, being weird with his phone. I'm scared he's in some kind of trouble. Gambling, maybe?" I watched Ethan's face carefully. He knew it wasn't gambling. I could see it in his eyes. He knew his brother's weaknesses. He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "A few weeks ago," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Before the wedding, I was driving home late from a friend's house and I took a detour to avoid some traffic. I drove past Sarah's apartment complex." He paused. I saw Liam's car parked out front. My heart gave a painful thud, but I kept my expression neutral, concerned. "His car? Are you sure?" "Positive," Ethan said. "It was almost 2 in the morning. I thought it was strange. I almost called him, but I didn't want to start anything. I figured there was a reasonable explanation." "Did you ever ask him about it?" I asked. "No," he admitted, looking ashamed. "I guess I didn't want to know the answer." "Thank you for telling me, Ethan," I said, reaching across the table and putting my hand on his. "That helps. It helps me understand that I'm not just being paranoid." He gave me a sad smile. "You're a good person, Chloe. You deserve to be happy." I left that coffee meeting with another piece of my arsenal secured. A witness. Ethan's confirmation was a powerful tool. He was Liam's own brother. His word would carry weight. Now I had everything. The phone records showing the secret communication. The bank statements showing the secret trips and purchases. The photos from social media proving they were together when they claimed to be apart. The prescription for prenatal vitamins confirming the baby. The emails detailing their entire mercenary plot to steal my inheritance. And now, a witness from inside Liam's own family. The time for quiet gathering was over. It was time to plan the confrontation. I didn't want a private fight. A screaming match behind closed doors would accomplish nothing. They would just deny, deflect, and gaslight me. No, their betrayal was epic in scale. Their punishment needed to be public. They had tried to humiliate me in the quietest, most intimate way. I was going to humiliate them in the loudest, most public way I could manage. I came up with the idea of a recommitment dinner. It was perfect. It was a plausible excuse to get everyone in the same room. Our parents, who were so invested in our union. Ethan, my new, unwitting ally. Maya, my loyal friend. And of course, the two guests of honor, Liam and Sarah. I presented the idea to Liam that night. "I've been thinking," I said as we were clearing the dinner plates. "The way things ended at the church was so awful. All our family and friends were left confused and worried. I think we need a chance to draw a line under it." He looked at me, intrigued. "What are you thinking?" "I want to have a small dinner party. Just our parents, Ethan and Maya and Sarah. We can tell them that we've talked everything through, that Sarah's health scare brought us closer, and that we're officially planning to reschedule the wedding. A celebration of us moving forward. A recommitment to our future." His face lit up. It was exactly what he wanted to hear. Me, taking control, smoothing things over, making everything perfect for him again. "Chloe, that is a brilliant idea," he said, kissing me. "It's perfect. It will put everyone's minds at ease. And I want Sarah to be there," I added, the final, crucial detail. "To show everyone that there are no hard feelings, that we're all still one big, happy family." "Of course," he said without a hint of hesitation. "She'll be thrilled." Oh, I'm sure she will be, I thought. I spent the next week planning the dinner down to the last detail. I chose a menu of all their favorite foods. I bought a new dress. I even bought a small, powerful projector, the kind used for business presentations, and tucked it away in the living room cabinet. Everything was a prop. The entire evening would be a stage, and I was the director. The night of the dinner arrived. Our guests came, bringing wine and flowers, their faces full of cautious optimism. My parents and Liam's parents were clearly relieved, happy to see us looking like a united couple again. Ethan gave me a small, knowing look, a silent acknowledgement of our previous conversation. Maya gave my hand a quick, supportive squeeze when no one was looking. And then Liam and Sarah arrived. They were a perfect picture of relief and feigned innocence. Liam was the proud fiancé, his arm possessively around my waist. Sarah, wearing a loose-fitting but elegant dress, gave me a fragile, grateful smile. She even brought me a gift, a small framed photo of the two of us from our college graduation. The audacity was stunning. We sat down to dinner. The conversation was light, full of forced cheerfulness. Liam's father proposed a toast to our resilience. My mother talked about how happy she was that we were moving past the unfortunate incident. Liam and Sarah exchanged a quick, triumphant glance over the table. They thought they had done it. They had weathered the storm and were sailing back into calm waters. They had no idea a tsunami was about to hit. I let them enjoy their moment. I laughed at the jokes. I talked about potential new wedding dates. I watched them, a scientist observing two particularly loathsome insects. Then, when dessert was served, I stood up, clinking my fork against my water glass. The table fell silent. All eyes were on me. "I'd like to say a few words," I began, my voice clear and steady. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head. Liam smiled at me, a proud, indulgent smile. He thought I was going to give a sentimental speech about love and forgiveness. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," I said, making eye contact with each person at the table. "This dinner is about honesty. It's about truth. And it's about moving forward. And in the spirit of honesty, I have a few questions." The mood in the room shifted slightly. The smiles became a little more fixed. I turned my body to face Liam directly. "Liam, my love," I said, my voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "I was just going through our old bank statements, for budget planning. And I was wondering, What business did you have in Asheville on the weekend of May 12th? I can't seem to recall that business conference. Liam froze, a piece of chocolate cake halfway to his mouth. His smile vanished. What? It was a marketing summit, honey. I told you all about it. Did you? I asked, feigning confusion. I turned my gaze to Sarah, who was suddenly looking very pale. And Sarah, what a strange coincidence that you were also terribly sick that exact same weekend. So sick you couldn't even text me back. I was so worried about you. Sarah started to stammer. I I had food poisoning. It was awful. It must have been, I said, my voice hardening. It's okay, though. My memory is a little fuzzy. Luckily, I have some things to help jog it. I walked over to the sideboard and picked up a folder. I walked back to the table and pulled out the first document. Here is the hotel receipt from a lovely inn in Asheville for that weekend, I announced to the room. A room with one king-sized bed, charged to our joint account. Funny, I didn't realize marketing summits were so romantic. I laid the paper on the table. Liam's father picked it up, his face darkening as he read it. Liam, what is this? His mother asked, her voice trembling. Liam shot a panicked look at Sarah. He tried to laugh it off. This is a misunderstanding. Chloe, what are you doing? This is insane. You're embarrassing us. Embarrassing you? I asked, my voice rising. Oh, honey, I'm just getting started. I pulled out the next set of papers. And here, I said, fanning them out like a deck of cards, are the phone records. Hundreds of late-night calls and texts between your phone, Liam, and a secret burner phone. A burner phone that, through a funny little coincidence, is linked to a social media account featuring a picture of Miso, Sarah's cat. Sarah let out a small, strangled gasp. She started to cry, the same pathetic crocodile tears she had shed in the church. I don't know what she's talking about, she whispered to Liam's mother, who was sitting next to her. Really? I said, my voice like ice. You don't know what I'm talking about? Then maybe you can explain this. I reached into the folder and pulled out the photo I had taken in her apartment. I had had it professionally blown up. It was an 8x10 glossy of the prescription bottle. Prenatal vitamins, Sarah? I asked, holding it up for everyone to see. Prescribed by an OB-GYN. For your low blood pressure, I assume? The room was in stunned, absolute silence. My mother's face was a mask of horror. Liam's father looked like he wanted to be sick. Liam jumped to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's enough, Chloe. You've gone crazy. You're making all of this up. Am I? I asked calmly. Am I making up the affair you've been having for over a year? Am I making up the baby you two conceived behind my back? Or am I making up the plan? The disgusting, pathetic plan to marry me, steal my inheritance, and then dump me so you two could live happily ever after on my money. That was the final blow. Liam's face went from white to a blotchy, furious red. You have no proof of that. That is a vicious lie. A lie? I said, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. You're right. I shouldn't make such wild accusations without evidence. I walked over to the living room cabinet and took out the small projector. I set it on the table, aimed it at the large blank wall behind the dining table, and plugged it into my laptop. With a few clicks, the screen came to life. And there they were, the emails, projected onto the wall in huge, undeniable letters for everyone to read. She's naive, Sarah. We've always known that. Once I have access to the trust, we can put our real plan into motion. She's completely back on board. She's making it easy for us. I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the projector. No one was eating. No one was breathing. They were all just reading the truth of who Liam and Sarah really were in their own damning words. I watched their faces. Liam looked like he had been punched in the stomach. Sarah was openly sobbing, her face buried in her hands. Liam's mother was staring at the wall, her expression one of utter devastation and shame. My father stood up slowly, his fists clenched at his sides, his eyes blazing with a protective fury that I had not seen since I was a child. Liam finally broke the silence. He let out a roar of fury and lunged for my laptop, intending to smash it. But Ethan was faster. He shot out of his chair and blocked Liam's path, grabbing his arms. "Don't, Liam," Ethan said, his voice quiet but firm. "It's over." Liam struggled for a moment, then seemed to collapse, all the fight going out of him. He sank back into his chair, a broken man. I turned my attention to Sarah. I walked around the table until I was standing right behind her. I leaned down, my lips close to her ear. "And to think," I whispered, my voice breaking for the first and only time that night. "I was going to name my first daughter after you." She flinched as if I had struck her. I straightened up and looked at the whole table, at the wreckage of two families. I felt a grim sense of finality. It was done. I looked at Liam one last time. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at his plate, at the half-eaten piece of cake, a symbol of a celebration that had turned into a funeral. "The wedding is off," I said, my voice ringing with authority. "The engagement is over. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You will not get a single cent of my inheritance. And my father's lawyer will be in touch with you about paying back every dollar you stole from our joint account to fund your sordid little affair." I looked from his pathetic, slumped form to Sarah's weeping one. "You wanted my money to start your perfect little family?" I said, my voice cold and clear. "Well, now you have a baby on the way and absolutely nothing else. I hope you're happy." And with that, I turned and walked out of the room. I didn't look back. I could hear the shouting start behind me, the recriminations, the tears. But it was just noise. I had said everything I needed to say. I had taken back my life. The house was no longer theirs to haunt. It was mine. The aftermath of the dinner party was swift and brutal. My parents immediately went into protection mode, shielding me from the fallout. My father, a man of few words but decisive action, handled the practicalities. He called Liam the next day and informed him that he had 2 hours to retrieve his personal belongings from my house while my father and 2 of my burly cousins stood watch to ensure he took only what was his. I heard from my mother that it was a silent, humiliating affair. Liam didn't say a word, just packed his bags under their stony glares and left his key on the counter. Liam's parents were, by all accounts, mortified. His mother called my mother, crying and apologizing profusely. She said they were ashamed and disgusted by their son's actions. They had apparently confronted Liam after I left the dinner, and it had been a terrible, house-shaking argument. They had told him he had dishonored their family, and that he was no longer welcome in their home until he took responsibility for the mess he had made. A few days later, I sat down with my dad in the living room. The house was quiet, finally feeling like my own space again. The air was lighter without Liam's presence lingering in every room. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" my dad asked, his voice gentle. "I'm okay, Dad," I said, and I was surprised to find that it was the truth. "I feel relieved." "I'm proud of you," he said, looking at me with an intensity that made my eyes well up. "You were strong. You stood up for yourself. You didn't let him get away with it." He handed me a business card. "This is Frank Miller. He's the best lawyer I know. He'll handle everything regarding the joint accounts and the money Liam spent. You don't have to worry about a thing." I took the card, feeling a wave of gratitude for my family. They were my true rock, the foundation that couldn't be shaken. Ethan called me a day or two after that. His voice was heavy with apology. "Chloe, I am so sorry," he said. "For what Liam did. For what he put you through. There's no excuse for it. He's my brother, but I don't even recognize him anymore." "It's not your fault, Ethan," I told him sincerely. "You were the only one who was honest with me." "My parents have cut him off for now," he continued. "He and Sarah are on their own. I don't know what they're going to do. Frankly, I don't care. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in my family is like him. We're all on your side. His words meant more to me than he could ever know. It wasn't about sides, not really. It was about decency. It was about knowing that the world wasn't entirely populated by liars and manipulators. My conversation with Maya was different. She came over with a bottle of expensive champagne and 2 glasses. "This is not for mourning," she declared as she popped the cork. "This is for celebrating your freedom and your glorious, righteous victory." We sat on my couch, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I let myself cry. Not the angry, frustrated tears of the past few weeks, but tears of grief. I cried for the friendship I had lost, for the woman I thought Sarah was. I had known her my entire life. The loss of that friendship, in many ways, hurt more than the loss of Liam. He was a liar I had known for a few years. She was a sister I had known forever. "It's okay to be sad about that part," Maya said, rubbing my back. "You're mourning a ghost. The person you thought she was never really existed, and that's a hard thing to accept." She was right. I was mourning a fiction, but it was a fiction I had loved dearly. The weeks turned into a month. The legal matters were handled swiftly and efficiently by my father's lawyer. Liam, under threat of a lawsuit for fraud, agreed to pay back every cent he had spent on Sarah from our joint account. It wasn't a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but it was the principle of it. He had to acknowledge his theft. I began the slow process of erasing him from my life. I packed up his remaining belongings, the little things he had forgotten in his haste, and donated them to charity. I took down all our photos. I changed the sheets on the bed. Slowly, the house started to feel like mine again. News about Liam and Sarah trickled back to me through the grapevine. It was not a happy story. Liam's boss, a close friend of my father's, had heard about the scandal and, citing a morality clause in his contract, had fired him. Without his high-paying job and with his parents refusing to help him, he was in financial trouble. He and Sarah had apparently moved into a small, cramped apartment on the bad side of town. Friends who had seen them said they looked miserable, constantly arguing in public about money and their bleak future. Sarah sent me one text message. It was a long, rambling paragraph, a desperate attempt at rewriting history. She claimed Liam had manipulated her, that she was lonely and vulnerable, and that the stress of the pregnancy had made her act irrationally. She begged for my forgiveness. She said she missed her best friend. I read the message once. I saw it for the self-serving, pathetic plea that it was. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. She was sorry her perfect plan had blown up in her face. I deleted the message and then blocked her number. I did the same for Liam. I wanted no path for them to ever reach me again. The day I turned 29, my inheritance came through. The full amount was transferred into a new bank account that was in my name, and my name alone. Seeing that number, that security, felt like the final closing of a chapter. This was what they had tried to steal from me. Not just the money, but the future it represented. A future of independence and freedom. I used a portion of it to book a trip. A long, luxurious, healing trip to the coast of Italy. And I took Maya with me. We spent 2 weeks eating pasta, drinking wine, and lying on sun-drenched beaches. We talked about everything and nothing. We laughed until our sides hurt. I didn't think about Liam or Sarah once. They were ghosts from another life, a life that no longer belonged to me. I was starting over, and the future looked as bright and beautiful as the sparkling Mediterranean Sea. One afternoon, as we were sitting on our hotel balcony overlooking the water, I got a text from Ethan. It was a screenshot of a social media post from a mutual acquaintance. It was a picture of Liam and Sarah, smiling awkwardly at what was clearly a baby shower. The decorations were cheap and the room was sparsely populated. The caption read, "So happy to celebrate the upcoming arrival of baby Mason. For anyone who still wants to help Liam and Sarah get ready, their registry is still open. Link in bio." Ethan had added a short message. "Thought you might want to see this. Looks like they're struggling." I clicked the link. The registry was for a cheap, big box store. It was filled with the most basic essential items: diapers, wipes, a simple crib, a used looking car seat. Very few of the items had been marked as purchased. It was a public, digital testament to their desperation and their isolation. They had burned so many bridges that there was almost no one left to help them build a new one. I looked at the photo of them on the post. They were smiling for the camera, but their eyes were tired. There were lines of stress around Liam's mouth. Sarah's smile didn't reach her eyes. They looked like two people trapped in a cage of their own making. They had gotten what they wanted: a baby together. But in the process, they had lost their integrity, their support systems, their financial stability, and their self-respect. They had built their future on a foundation of lies, and now the whole structure was crumbling around them. Maya leaned over, looking at my phone. "Wow," she said softly. "That's bleak." "Yes," I said, a small, calm smile on my face. "It is." I locked my phone and put it down. I picked up my glass of wine and took a sip. The cool liquid a pleasant contrast to the warm Italian sun. I looked out at the endless blue horizon. I felt no anger, no hatred, no desire for any further revenge. I felt nothing for them at all, just a profound, peaceful, and liberating indifference. They had their baby and their miserable little life. And I had my freedom, my future, and the whole wide world in front of me. They had made their bed, and as I watched the sun begin to set, painting the sky in brilliant strokes of orange and pink, I knew with absolute certainty that I would never have to lie in it with them. My new life was just beginning.